Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate 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 Vasudevaya.
Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th Canto, 21st, third chapter, text 5. Kenachit bhikshuna gitam paribhutena durjanai smarata dhrityuktena vipakam nija karmanam. Kenachit, by a certain bhikshuna sannyasi, gitam sang paribhutena, who was insulted durjanai, by impious persons, smarata, remembering dhrityuktena, fixing his resolution, vipakam, the consequences, nija karmanam, of his own past activities. Translation. Once a certain sannyasi was insulted in many ways by impious men. However, with determination, he remembered that he was suffering the fruit of his own previous karma. I will narrate to you his story and that which he spoke. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments as follows. Often those who give up the materialistic path and devote themselves to renunciation are attacked by impious persons. This analysis, however, is superficial, since the punishment is actually the cumulative result of one's past karma. Some renunciates show lack of tolerance when presented with the remnants of their previous sins, and thus are forced to enter again onto the path of impious life. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, therefore, instructs that one should become as tolerant as a tree. If a neophyte on the path of devotion or service to the Lord's pure devotees is attacked by envious persons, he must accept it as a consequence of his previous fruitive activities. One should be intelligent and avoid future unhappiness by rejecting the ethic of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. If one refuses to enter into enmity with envious men, they will automatically leave him alone. And the next verse. Avanti Shudvija Kashchit Asid Adhyatmata Adhyatmashriya Varta Vitti Kadariastu Kami Lubdho Trikopana. In the country of Avanti, there once lived a certain Brahmana who was very rich and gifted with all opulences, and who was engaged in the occupation of commerce. But he was a miserly person, lusty, greedy, and very prone to anger. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the Avanti country is in the district of Malwa. This Brahmana was extremely wealthy, doing business in agriculture, banking, and so on. Being a miser, he suffered agony when his hard-earned wealth was lost, as will be described by the Lord himself. Shall we read one more? Okay, number 7.
What?
Shall we read one verse more, or we can discuss?
Not today.
Okay, let's read a little bit more in the story.
Understand.
In his home, devoid of religiosity and lawful sense gratification, the family members and guests were never properly respected, even with words. He will not even allow sufficient gratification for his own body at the suitable times. 8. Since he was so hard-hearted and miserly, his sons, in-laws, wife, daughters, and servants began to feel inimical toward him. Becoming disgusted, they would never treat him with affection. 9. In this way, the presiding deities of the 5 family sacrifices became angry at the Brahmana who, being niggardly, courted his wealth like a yaksha, who had no good destination either in this world or the next, and who was totally deprived of religiosity and sense enjoyment. And 10, O magnanimous Uddhava, by his neglect of these demigods, he depleted his stock of piety and all his wealth. The accumulation of his repeated exhaustive endeavors was totally lost. Purport. The Brahmana's stock of piety became like a withered branch that no longer gives fruits or flowers. Srila Jiva Goswami comments that the Brahmana had a trace of piety directed at the Supreme Lord with hopes of liberation. That pure portion of the branch of his piety remained unwithered, eventually giving the fruit of knowledge. The first verse, Maharaj, we read number 6. In number 6th verse, it was described that he suffered from the insults of others, but that was actually his own karma. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati explained that this superficially it seems that the renunciates in Kali Yuga sometimes are attacked by impious people, but actually they get the results of their own previous activities. So because we read this verse yesterday, the question was, in the case of devotees, especially those who are advanced, is those who are advanced or renounced, is that also the case? In other words, to what extent someone's suffering is a question of one own's karma, or in the case of advanced devotees, Krishna's arrangement, because the devotee doesn't have fruitive results?
That requires discussion.
Yeah.
Because it's not an easy topic, because we learn from the Shastra and our Vaishnava acharyas by so many devotional activities, all the karmic reactions are burned to ashes, even prarabdha karma.
Yes.
Even prarabdha karma. Vishwanath Thakur explains, just by chanting Hare Krishna, being engaged in devotional service, all karmic reactions are being burned to ashes. But then again, we often hear that a devotee should think like this. This is one verse.
Tatyana Kampam.
Yes, Tatyana Kampam Shishkamana. That devotee should think in this way, that whatever happens to me, anything negative, it is simply due to my past karmic activities, even dating back in previous lives. So it seems to be a contradiction. On one hand, devotee should not have any karma. But then the question is, does a devotee act continuously on the platform of pure devotional service? Because he might again fall back into karmic activities. Activities of gratifying the senses, rather gratifying Krishna's senses. So then there might be again some reactions manifesting. Another consideration is that yes, these sinful reactions, karmic reactions are being burned to ashes, but if Krishna wants, he can some sinful reactions affect his devotee in order to teach him a lesson. In order to teach him a lesson, to understand better that I have to surrender more to Krishna, or I have to be careful on the path of devotional service. So he might allow sometimes some reactions to affect the devotee, if he desires so. So there's many different considerations, I think.
Other
We have
comments?
a discussion.
Yes, yeah. Why are you so silent when Maharaj is here? Everybody's silent. Otherwise, there's discussion.
Because they're used, I sit there and talk, and everybody just, relaxes. My voice is also not. Krishna.
Question?
Do some other points we can pick up?
Yeah, we can. Huh? So now, related.
Already Maharaj explained. I had a question that you explained already, Maharaj, and the question you answered my question before I answered. So
Yeah. Karmic reactions.
it is that somehow Krishna arranged some karmic reaction to reveal, just to teach any kind of lessons the devotee, because the tendency to act in a material ways is already inside, and we want to satisfy our senses. So Krishna, the difficult situation, devotee just
Otherwise, the devotee can think, I'm free from karma.
yeah.
I can do whatever I want. I'm free.
We want to change the desire, because the desire is the root of material suffering. The desire for
And
material,
there's also seva aparad, seva aparad, vaishnava aparad, nama aparad. So that also creates reactions.
Yeah.
The devotee has, in other words, the devotee has to be careful to think, I'm on a transcendental platform. I'm free from any reactions. And then he becomes bewildered. And why some suffering? Why do I have to experience some suffering? Then he gets confused. So better is to think I'm not on that platform. That's the goal. I just have to be very cautious, very careful. And another consideration is just being in the material world means suffering. It's not that, if I'm all these sinful reactions are being burned to ashes, I'm in Vaikuntha. I'm still here in this material world, and it is full of suffering. Krishna explains in the Gita. Full of suffering. And suffering is all usually, of course, we have adibodic, adidevic. So that's not necessarily a sinful reaction. It is the material nature, implies suffering on a devotee. That's not necessarily sinful reaction. When it's too cold or drought or whatever, coming from nature, the devotee should not think this is my sinful reaction. The winter is very severe this year. This is my sinful reaction. just the fact that we are in this material world, there must be suffering. And but a more karmic-related suffering is generally imposed by living entities.
Yeah.
By living entities. That's the general karmic reaction. If some living entity inflicts suffering upon me, human beings or whatever, yeah, then one should definitely think this way. If someone is always on your case, you didn't do anything wrong, but still finding some fault and insulting you, then one should think this way. It's my reaction. But again, it should be burned. But if Krishna wants, he can allow some reactions to manifest, so that the devotee remains sincere on the path of devotional service.
Sometimes I also think Krishna says so many times in the Bhagavad Gita.
The painting is very nice, but you cannot lean on against the wall. That's a problem. Forces you to say that.
You won't change.
No. Maybe in 20 years.
Maybe here.
No, it's okay. What was the point?
Yes, that Krishna says in the Gita many times, we have to be equal towards enemies and friends. Many times we have to be equal, sama, the same. And to enemies and friends, we have to be.
Many times.
Yeah, Krishna says many times that, at least a few times. Yes.
I thought he said many times.
In many verses in 12th chapter and other chapters.
Yeah.
And and then because devotees usually they don't have enemies, and they are friendly, but sometimes it happens between devotees there's some enmity, and then I think that it's Krishna is giving us a chance to actually practice this and show him that we can be friendly towards anyone, as you say, even if somebody is on your case without any fault, we can tolerate and say, yeah, it's my.
But that's also an interesting point, that Vaishnava doesn't have any enemies. But that doesn't mean that others don't see him as an enemy. He doesn't have any enemies, but they think that he's an enemy.
Yeah.
So it's not, the meaning is not exactly that he has no enemies, including others don't see him as an enemy. Otherwise, how do we explain Prahlad Maharaj and Haridas Thakur? They didn't have any enemies, but others thought the Vaishnava is an enemy.
And one other point I was thinking in the verse after, when the story began, how this Brahmana was engaged in commerce and banking, and I was just wondering, how can a Brahmana be a trader and very, what was it? The previous one. Varta Vritti. He was engaged in the occupation of commerce and the purport, doing business in agriculture, banking, and so on. Businessman, Brahmana. But it's a business and banking. It's like a description of a Vaishya. Varta is business here.
We can see it already now. We can see that already now. Brahmana is involved in that kind of this activity.
What does he say?
Because we can see that Brahmanas are involved in business nowadays.
So, no contradiction.
No, if there's no other means to maintain a family, then he has no other choice. Like here also, we have so many devotee brahmanas that nobody's giving dakshi. That's the problem. So they're forced to do some Vaishya activity. So perhaps, at that time also it was not like purely manifested, varnashram, and everybody exactly acts according to this varna. So there's some crossover with other varna activities if the need is there. Yeah. Or another explanation could be that he didn't act properly. And maybe therefore he got also some karmic reactions. Also, this explained what he was a miser, right?
Yeah, big miser, yeah.
That's also not a Brahminical qualification.
Yeah.
So there's already some deviation in that particular Brahmana going on. If he is a miser and
lustful, greedy, and prone to anger.
Yeah,
so that's not Brahminical.
It's not a Brahmana. In name, perhaps, or by birth, he was a Brahmana, but he was definitely not acting or behaving like a Brahmana. So that's perhaps already a part of his entanglement. Why he had to undergo so many reactions. Later on, we'll describe.
Actually, it says here Dvija. It says Dvija, which normally is a Brahmana, but it could be referring
to
twice born. It could be Vaishyas, also Dvijas and Kshatriyas. That's another point.
No, but Prabhupada uses the word Brahmana.
Brahmana.
So by birth, but not acting as a Brahmana.
Yeah. So miserly that even he didn't enjoy his wealth. He's depriving himself, not only his relatives, but even himself, his own body.
Yeah, that's the nature of a miser. That so painful, even for your own sense gratification. You spend some money, it's too painful. They're just sitting on their wealth. They're just a tiny portion, has to be sacrificed. It's too painful. Like sometimes you might have experience. If you have something to let's say medicine or for the ladies, some beauty items, and it was just one little bottle that's missing, you immediately have to replace it. Just make sure that the full amount is always there. You don't have experience? No. There's some ladies, they have this experience. They really calculate. Or medicine also. Just a little missing, immediately to make sure. So miser's a little bit like that. It scares him. If a little, yes, just 1% less wealth, he freaks out. That's a miser. So he even sacrifices his own sense gratification because he's so attached to his wealth.
Yeah.
I think the owner of IKEA is the example of that. It doesn't pay anything for him. I mean, it's so simple.
Maybe he's renounced.
But he's a billionaire.
On Sankirtan, when we're driving, we didn't want to spend any money on gasoline until the last possible then in the middle of the day. So rather just stopping and, no. Miser. And then we had to beg for the petrol, I remember. We had to stop some trucks and cars.
With pipe? Or
Huh?
with pipe, how you get?
No, we had this empty canister.
Yes.
I remember.
We
didn't want to stop and spend money. But anyway, next gas station. Next gas station. And at one point, in the middle of the highway. Yeah, I think our treasurers are often misers. Devotees really need something, but they don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Prabhupada trained us this way. But Srila Prabhupada was not a miser. He just wanted to make sure everything is spent for Krishna. So in that sense, devotee is a miser. He doesn't want to spend anything for Maya. Everything for Krishna. But if we don't even want to spend for Krishna, then we are really misers. We cannot save money for Krishna's service. That's not possible. You have to spend. And then Krishna will supply so much. Any other point, or that's it?
That's it, I think. Yeah. Question. She has a question.
Как точно се унищожават греховните реакции? В смисъл, човек трябва да извърши чисто правилно служение, за да могат да се изгорят, или като започне процеса на правилно служение, дори да има мишра бакта, в смисъл смесено правилно служение, те започват да горят. Това не ми е ясно.
About again the karmic reactions, are they burnt once devotee begins practicing devotional service, or has to reach the level of pure devotional service? Then they are burned.
No, it is already said at the time of initiation. Everything is burned just by chanting Hare Krishna. By chanting once?
Yes.
But then, of course, also the point of purity is there, because if you chant with offenses, then it's not the same burning. Less burning. But if we consider all the activities we do, chanting and so many things we do, and at the time of initiation also, then I remember the other example was given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, I think in Madhura Kadambini, with the city. He gives that example. The city is burned to ashes. But if you go there, you still see some bricks, some wood logs half burned, and so still some remnants are there. So that could also be the meaning, burned to ashes. But if you go there, you go deep into the heart, and some little remnants are there. So they also have to be burned to ashes. So my understanding is there's a general, the city is burned to ashes. But that doesn't mean there's nothing, just the earth. You go, there's so many remnants lying here and there. So that's my understanding, burned to ashes, no karmic reactions. Like that, city is burned to ashes. But still, if you go deep into the heart, there's so many subtle impurities are there. And these impurities, must be connected with previous activities. Where do they come from?
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, more subtle reactions are there. Yeah. They also must be burned by, yes, in that sense, pure devotional service. The devotee becomes pure, no more offenses, then everything is burned. So major burning process, and then more subtle purification. Purification means burning, no? Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Purification,
Mm-hmm.
you purify. Purify. Yes, because if it's impure, then there must be reactions. To that extent, the devotee's activities or chanting, to the extent it is not pure, then again he's involved. He's involved with the material qualities.
Mm.
It's a very complex topic. Yeah, but this I remember. Srila Vishwanath Thakur, he explains this burning to ashes refers to like the city. He gives this example of the city. City is burned to ashes, but you go there, so many remnants of it. They also must be kicked, removed.
Mm-hmm.
They also must be removed. And then the other point of not creating new reactions.
Yeah.
By offenses and deviating, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the new reactions coming. Or that new can also mean that old reactions are, being channeled through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily completely new karmic reactions. Just old ones are being manifesting, being channeled through. Yeah. Krishna allows. Slap in the face. Wake up, wake up. That might be the explanation why some devotee is always on your case. And again, relationships are so complicated, even among devotees. That's another big topic. Relationship among devotees. You can write books about it. Relationships. Because some devotees are more advanced, some less advanced. We have materialistic devotees. They're also being described. They still have material desires. And, neophyte devotees, they might have still some material qualities. And that all reflects on the association of devotees. It influences the association. And then what to do, like Srila Prabhupada explained to one Prabhupada, the Vaishnava devotee, he must learn to tolerate. It's the only solution. Because often we cannot change a person. We desire that a devotee changes, that we sometimes even demand a particular devotee, he must change his nature, his attitude, his the way he speaks, the way he looks, everything has to change. You just demand it. But it doesn't work. And then we become disappointed. We become frustrated. Why the devotee doesn't change? Because it's not that simple. Then what to do? Tolerate. Just have to tolerate. And if really devotees act or behave impossible, then you take a distance. You don't associate closely.
Mm.
That's also a meaning of tolerating. Tolerating does not necessarily mean that you're in a close, intimate association and you tolerate. No, you don't. You don't have a close association. That's also the meaning of tolerating. You take a distance. That's also one way to tolerate. You just take a distance. You don't want to change, but you take a distance. Not tolerating means you want to change. You demand that devotees should change, then you cannot tolerate. So you take a distance. That's one way to tolerate. If he doesn't want to change, that devotee, let him do, but I take my distance. Yes. Tolerance is such an important quality in devotion service, especially association of devotees. They're so tolerant. But again, that doesn't mean you allow other devotees to take advantage. Like the example of that Narada Muni and the snake. He had a disciple, the snake became a disciple. And then the snake, understood, now I'm a devotee, I have to be tolerant. And then the children, they grabbed the snake, by the tail and threw it down. So they took advantage. And then the snake approached the Muni. What shall I do? And then you show your teeth, but don't bite, just show your teeth. Children came again and then grabbed and then run away. Sometimes we might have to show our teeth. If devotees try to take advantage of my tolerance, then we have to show the teeth. Sometimes charge back. Wait a minute, now you're going too far. I mean, you really insulted me. By all good intentions, but your words really disturb me, really insult me. You cannot do that. You show the teeth. But you don't bite. You don't bite, you don't retaliate. And what can you do? Put some powderized bricks in a prasadam or something.
Revenge.
You don't show the teeth. You don't wrestle on the ground. But show the teeth. Show the teeth, charge back, be strong. You cannot treat me like that. Yes, I can. No, you cannot. Oops. Or I will tell your spiritual master. That's a very effective mantra. I will tell you, I will inform your spiritual master. No.
Good idea, actually. To tell the spiritual master.
I will call him up now. Okay?
Yes, thank you very much.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.